So my name is Joe Hines. I'm the Executive Director of the Woodburn Christian Children's Home, and we are crazy excited that you're here today. Actually, there's over 270 of you here to roast Mr. Lee Bracey. Yeah. And of course, for every roast, we ask you to pray for Mrs. Vivian Bracey. Because you know retirement's twice the husband and half the pay. So she's got a lot to look forward to. Right. So and we're going to have a great time. We're going to have a great time today. It should last about 2.5 hours. And we're excited you're here today to celebrate the commitment of Lee and Vivian, and of course, Lee and Vivian's family. We read in Psalm 145, "Great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. His greatness no one can fathom." And that's what we're here to celebrate. We're here to celebrate the greatness of God. We're also here to celebrate the hard work, the commitment, and the faithfulness of Lee and Vivian and their family. We're here to celebrate what God is doing through the special place known as Woodburn Christian Children's Home, the hundreds and hundreds of lives who have been impacted by the ministry. At the head table here, we have the official roasters. So we're looking forward to what they have to contribute to the evening. We have John Branyan, somewhere close, yes, over there, our Master of Ceremonies. The reserve tables are Lee and Vivian's family. And if I counted correctly, it's about 16 of them. They're up from Texas, Arkansas, Northern Indiana, and Ohio. And we're thankful for your journeys up here. We have the house parents. The house parents say, "Woo!" Oh, very good. Yeah, that was Dave Smith. Dave and Kendra Smith and Daryl and Miranda Woolard up there with our WCCH kids say, "Woo!" Yeah, very good. Okay. They're playing right along. We're looking forward to getting the food. My wife is here, Vicki, with two of our 4 kids. They're made it here today. And we have our board of directors. If you're a board of director or a board of director's spouse, please stand just for a second. Yes. In a moment, we're going to have a word of prayer for the food and the drinks. Of course, food's there, drinks are over there, the bathrooms are over that way. We have a WCCH history table over, yes. I feel Lee's presence behind me. Yes. I've come to anticipate that. So the history table's over here. Great pictures from the past. And before you leave today, we have a gift bag for each family. One gift bag per family. We have a setup over here if you want to give a gift in honor of Lee and Vivian to our Legacy Fund, the registration table. I know a lot of you guys didn't get a chance to sign up at the registration book, so we ask you to do that at some point. And we're really specifying rude comments and rude accusations, primarily aimed at Lee. So we'll go through the food line, and then...
That's not what you said this was going to be all about.
Mr. Bracey, I have the microphone right now. So just sit there and look pretty. Okay, so would you please join me in a word of prayer? Gracious Father, how thankful we are for Jesus, your great love, your desire to be with us, your compassion expressed through Jesus. Father, thank you for counting us worthy through our faith in Jesus. We pray our gathering is pleasing to you, our laughter, our hope, and the ministry of the Woodburn Christian Children's Home. Father, we thank you for the food you have provided, the hands that have prepared it, and those who will be nourished by it. Father, we offer these prayers to you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. So there's two. Now I'd like to introduce our Master of Ceremony, John Branyan.
Hey, thanks for that completely tepid applause. This is going to be great. These are your people, Lee. It is great. It's an honor for me to be here. Lee called me up a couple of months ago and asked if I wanted to come to his retirement party, and I said nope. And he said, well, it's going to be a roast. And I said, oh, okay, well, in that case I will. And thanks for coming, all of you, to be a part of this while we roast with Lee. These are the people up here, the children's home people, is that right? All you people up there? Not all of them? Do you guys know who Lee Bracey is, you people up there? They don't all know, okay. Anyway, somebody said that those were people who currently are children's home parents and they live at the children's home and all that, and so that's where, now that he's not the director anymore, he doesn't care where they sit, just shove them off in the corner and... Typical Lee Bracey leadership. All right. It has been said, now, Vivian, you can't keep telling everybody that we're kidding all out from here. Can't do that. All right, just as a little word of background for myself personally, because I've done these twice for Church of Christ people, and they've both been terrible. Because Church of Christ people are so nice. They just don't like to make fun of each other. They don't think that that's what Jesus would do, but he would. See? Here we go. All right, unless you've walked in someone else's shoes, you should not criticize them. And it would be easy to stand up here and criticize Lee Bracey. It would be really easy to stand up here. Seriously, you guys, it would be so easy to stand up here and criticize Lee Bracey. 30 seconds after you meet the guy, you have a whole list of things you can criticize. I wrote 5 minutes just on his mustache. Lee Bracey's retiring as the director of Woodburn Christian Children's Home. And I'm sure I am not the only person in the room who is thinking, whoop-de-doo. Whoop-de-doo. People retire from stuff all the time. People retire from corporations, from government offices, from ministries. And many of those people retire amid dramatic scandals. But not Bracey. Nothing that interesting. He just got old. Whoop-de-doo. But there is something unique about the way that Lee Bracey got old. Something unique to him. Lee got old without becoming mature. Because some people when they get old, they mature, they get old in their minds. They start to think like old people. But Lee doesn't think like an old person. When he talks, you'd swear he was just born yesterday. So it seemed appropriate that we commemorate Lee Bracey's retirement. That we return in some way. Not necessarily to celebrate an important milestone, but more like breathing a collective sigh of relief. This is a chance for those of us who know Lee best to get together and publicly say, good riddance. And Lee, I gotta tell you, it is never difficult finding people who are eager to attend a reception for a beloved leader and friend. But that's not what we have here. Once people found out that we were having a retirement party for you, they started making all kinds of excuses to skip it. One guy said that the cable guy is coming over, and it's Sunday. One guy said my therapist told me that I need to stay away from toxic people. One guy said my parole officer won't let me. Joe Hines, that was a lie. So for a while it looked like this party was just going to be you and me and Vivian. And Vivian hadn't even RSVP'd. And then we announced that it was going to be a roast, and suddenly people started lining up to attend. We had to turn people away. People who haven't contacted you in years, strangers. People who have stood behind you at the post office. People who have only seen you at a distance. The UPS man. And a guy who only knows you from your mustache. The new problem that we had was, how do we graciously turn people away? So we wrote out this little letter and sent it out in the mail. To all those who we couldn't make time for everybody that wanted to attack you. Thank you for your willingness to insult Lee Bracey. But we don't have time for everyone who loathes him to express their sentiments. The man has spent his lifetime being repulsive. So in the interest of time, we need to allow speaking time for those who he has annoyed the most. Then the problem was reining in the enthusiasm for the participants. We had a lot of people who were willing to get up here, Lee, and roast you. And again, it's a Church of Christ crowd, and so I had to tell them kind of what the parameters are. Some of them wanted to go a little too far. I started getting some calls. Jim Plattner asked, is it okay if I punch him in the face? Doug Bradburn wanted to flog you. And Autumn Holbert, your own granddaughter, said, I just want to push him down the stairs. But we're not doing any of those things. Instead, we're going to keep it civil, somewhat. And so it's going to be just auditory, just words in lieu of actual physical assault. And we are ready to get the roast started. All right, ladies and gentlemen, shall we go? Up to the microphone first is a preacher who knows Lee Bracey well. Put your hands together and welcome Michael Boer. Michael Boer.
Gil was just down there looking at me saying, boy, I'm glad you're following the comedian and not me. Hard act to follow. When I was first contacted about this, I began thinking a little bit. We crossed paths 35 years ago, October of 1983. I had just moved up into this area. I love church camp. Lee was the dean of one of the, now there's going to be two accounts of the story. My account, which is 100% spot on. Lee's mind-wandering account isn't even close. So when he tries to correct you later about what I'm saying about it, you just don't pay a lick of attention to him, as most people usually don't. But I called him up and I said, Lee, I love church camp. My daughter's going to be this year week at camp. Do you mind if I come and help? Lee has a lot of different voices. His funny voice, his voice that more or less is somewhat authoritarian. In his authoritarian voice, he said, well, Michael, I would have to have you come and work at church camp, but you must understand, I am the dean. I thought, I'm just volunteering to help, man. So at the end of our conversation, and Vivian will attest to this, I hung up the phone and looked at my wife, Marcia, and I said, that guy's a jerk. And I kid you not, Lee looked at Vivian when he hung up and he said, that guy's a jerk. That's why we're such good friends. We're both jerks. You know, and we like each other because of that. What else? From that friendship that was formed that I treasured greatly, after working in camp and getting to know that we're jerks but we like each other, I'm going to share something I haven't shared with very many people. Lee's the only man I've ever kissed. It's true, isn't it? He was getting ready to have surgery at the hospital in Angola. My daughter at that time was working there. She called me up because she knew of our true friendship. She said, Dad, Lee's getting ready to have surgery. I said, you're not supposed to be telling me that kind of stuff, Michelle. That's against HIPAA. She said, Vivian said, tell you. She said, get over here. I said, I'm working in the yard. I'm smelling. She said, Dad, you need to get over here right now. So I realized it was serious. So I drove rather fast, praying there was no policemen, especially where they hide at 327 and 20 all the time. And there was none there. And I got there quickly, and they was getting ready to take Lee out. Not figuratively, hopefully. But anyway, they were getting ready to take him into the room, and we had prayer, and Vivian kissed him. Instinctively, I just did over.
Instinctively.
Really, just this really strong attraction, you know, but I won't go there too much.
Don't be.
You're not allowed to talk. But anyway, that was Sally left. Instinctively, I just bent over and kissed him. Later on, he said, you know, if something would have happened, I would have went into eternity with that on my mind. And the last thing I remember. And now I've kissed you twice. So, don't talk or you may get the third one. But anyway, but seriously, and I don't know how serious we're supposed to be, but I have to be. Over the years that I've known Lee since the fall of 1983, I firmly can say, because I've been around here a long time as well as some of the others, I came over with the Crooks and they said, who's going to be there? And I said, well, the old toes will be there for sure. And I mentioned Ron Collins and Tom Garman and, you know, some of us old guys have been around here forever. And I think they would all agree with me that Lee and Vivian have been a phenomenal stabilizing force, not just in the tri-state area, not just in the state of Indiana, but I believe in our nation. His endeavors for the children, his love for them, he is an individual that would always lend an ear, and with all the joking that he does do, he has a phenomenally compassionate, serious side. My mind isn't what it used to be either, and I realize that, so I called Vivian to verify I wasn't wandering in my mind. But I believe this sums up what Lee means to ministers. Because he's been a minister's minister, a man of compassion. When we were hurting, he was there for us. When my wife was diagnosed and had brain surgery, and I did not know this till a long time later, Lee and Vivian came to see her. And for some reason, I had to walk out in the hallway. And she looked at Lee, and she said, after I die, take care of Michael. That says a lot about Lee Bracey and about Vivian Bracey. And buddy, I don't know if that's what I'm supposed to do to roast you, but I appreciate and am thankful for the friendship that we have, what you've done for the children's home, for God's people in this area. And I won't kiss you. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Michael. You remember the last time that we were making out? And you told me that I was the only one? Next up we've got another preacher. And preachers, let's try to keep the compliments to a minimum up here, all right? Focus, guys. Next up, Jim Plattner. Jim Plattner. There, Jim.
I would be the first to tell you that Lee Bracey is a trustworthy man. And when he speaks from the pulpit, counseling you, whatever, I would say you need to trust him. But when Lee Bracey looks at you and says, trust me, you know, that little, he's probably done it with all of you, right? Run for your life. The story behind that for me, one we both told in a lot of different versions. In Toledo, Ohio, I moved there in '84. So I want to know the ropes, found out the preachers eat breakfast together every Wednesday morning at Toledo Hospital. We had our little clergy badges, and we got them to play discount. It was a cheap place to eat, and so preachers will be there. Well, I didn't know the ropes about the hospital, and Lee says, Jim, I'm going to help you. That's another reason to run. And so he says, this is the clergy office, and here's the code, and it was a backward V, I remember. You get in here, and then they have a stamp pad and a stamp, and the ticket they gave you when you came in the parking garage, you stamp the back of it, and you get out for free. Then he looked at me and says, Jim, since you're new, let me stamp your ticket. You know I'm a trustworthy person, and I'm a trusting person. I handed Lee my ticket. He sets it on the thing, he takes the stamp and goes, the back of it was completely black. Trust me. You should have seen the look on the parking attendant lot's face when I left. She didn't know what to do with me, and I said, Lee Bracey, and she said, go ahead. So just beware. If Lee Bracey ever says, trust me, and he's not in the pulpit, or if he doesn't have a Bible in his hand, run for your life. Lee, we love you. Thanks, brother.
All right, thanks, Jim. Kay Stang is the prior administrator at Woodburn Christian Children's Home, and she's going to come up and hopefully not say anything too nice. Kay Stang. I'm sorry, what did I say? S.T. Strang. Yeah.
Tell him.
Behind every good man is a good wife.
Well, I don't have as many stories as what some of these people have, because Lee came to our house mainly when we were at Woodburn to talk with Lee and decide what the progress should be of him taking over. So it was so busy a time that one night he decided he would stay overnight. And I wasn't so sure about that. I hoped the sheets were clean, and I hoped he didn't expect me to cook a lot. But I have a little poem that I have written that will tell you exactly what we went through. One time we had a funny cat. He liked to play cat jokes, even if you were very young or just some older folks. He was a Siamese, soft brown fur and eyes of blue. He'd sneak around the house at night, hunting pranks he'd like to do. Lee Bracey came one night and said that he would stay. He and Strang could talk about his brand new job that way. Early in the morning, Bracey said, I'll take a shower. But Lee let out a piercing scream. That cat had showed cat power. Shivering in the tub, a live and squealing mouse. Bracey's yells and screams were heard all throughout the house. That ornery cat was having fun with the mouse that he was playing. Lee and I truly wondered if Bracey regretted his night staying. Lee and I were laughing, for we knew what Cat had done, and thought our cat was clever for the ruckus and the fun. So So if you need to oust a guest, we have a plan for you. Just borrow our smart cat, young Lee. He knows just what to do.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Okay, Strang. So that was probably the first time that you tried the old kill a mouse and throw it in the bathtub and blame the cat trick. It's been a faithful standby for you. Next up, we got a preacher, Dan Johnson. Am I saying that right? Johnson?
Nice try. This is great to be here to roast Lee. I don't know about this. Lee gets a roast and all we get is hors d'oeuvres, which is French for Lee's too cheap to spring for dinner. I don't know if you got one of these flyers in the mail, but they changed it when I first heard about it was hors d'oeuvres, and they changed it to appetizers because I don't think Lee thought we were capable of understanding what hors d'oeuvres are. I don't know. Lee, I've preached at the Kalkaska Church of Christ for about 30 years, and Lee's from Kalkaska. His home congregation, and I do have a picture to prove it. We got some other Kalkaska people here, Steve and Patty over there from Kalkaska, and I think Rick Stacy's here someplace. I saw, there you are, another Kalkaska boy. You kind of grew up with Lee, is that right? You two good friends? Yeah, okay. I've got a picture to prove this. From an old church directory. This is no lie. And here's Lee's picture from the Kalkaska Church of Christ photo directory from way back when. I blew it up as big as I could so everybody can see it. They'll be around if you want to come. Here, Lee, make yourself useful. So Lee's just an old Kalkaska boy, and by the way, Kalkaska is an old Indian word. If you know that, Native American moms used it to tell their kids, it's cold outside, put your ear flaps down. So you can see that on the picture there with the ear flappers. It's cold out there. Hold that up. Don't put that down. So. I knew I wasn't to say anything nice about Lee, and I didn't want to anyway. But I do want to say something nice about Miss Vivian, because everybody loves Miss Vivian. And that's really one of the only reasons we're kind to Lee, is so he'll bring Vivian, you know. So, Vivian, I need you to come up again. And if you could make your way around one of the ends. I have this special presentation for Vivian as well, and I have a good authority that this is Miss Vivian's favorite verse in the Bible, and it is in the words of Jesus. And it's in response to those who said to Jesus, so in the resurrection, whose wife will she be? You know that verse. And what Jesus said just warms Vivian's heart, because Jesus answered and said to them, the sons of this age marry and are given in marriage. But those who are counted worthy to attain that age and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Luke chapter 20, verses 34 through 35. So with this picture and plaque for Miss Vivian. So if you get a chance to look at that picture as well, Lee is standing, Vivian is looking at him very affectionately, as she always does. And Lee is standing there looking like the cat that ate the canary, as he always does. And he is the schmoozer par excellence. You know, did you bring your brochures with you, Lee? Okay. I'm glad you did. So, just want to come back to this. Hold that picture. So, when Lee was young, of course, his parents, tried to childproof the house, but he kept getting back in anyway. And I didn't notice this. You really have to seek this picture out before you leave. I didn't notice this until I blew it up like almost life size. That he's trying to get in the house. He's climbing up the steps to the door, and on the top steps is this scary idol kind of thing. It's like the image of Baal or Beelzebub or something. I think his mom was trying to ward him off and make it go away. Anyway, thank you all for the invitation to come and help roast and toast my friend Lee Bracey.
I think we should hold that the rest of the night. You do look better without a mustache, too. Yeah. It goes without saying, Lee's influence is going to be missed around the children's home. He's taught many generations of young people many things. He taught me a lot of things. He taught me how to roll a cigarette. You're not till the end, right?
Just getting ready.
All right. Let's see. Rabbit dog. They call him Dale Rabbit Dog. Is that? I know I'm not pronouncing that right, but that's what he told me to introduce you as Dale Rabbit Dog.
He calls me the rabbit dog. I call him the flatulent friar of Fremont. That's true. He can attest to it. He asked me to say a few words. It's interesting what Kay had to say about the cat and Dan. Lee Bracey was raised on a cat ranch in northern Michigan. From the time he could crawl, he played in the sandbox in the backyard, digging for buried treasure, which he often found with that many cats. The years passed, and needless to say, Lee grew up lacking in sophistication. But a young gal came to the cat ranch one day in hopes of adopting a feline, and there in the sandbox was Lee. And she knew he was one strange cat. Vivian took pity on him, married him, tried to wean him from the litter box, and after several years with a minimal degree of success, enrolled him in a small Bible college in Lansing. Lee's first ministry after college was at the Corona Church of Christ. Much to the people's dismay, they found out that Lee knew very little about bathroom etiquette. Back then, the church only had one bathroom, so they made up a list of rules and posted it. The rules are as follows. hit the water, the whole water, and nothing but the water. Lee. 3 words. Courtesy flush, Lee. Rule number 3, when the toilet paper runs out, do not use the Sunday school take-home papers. Lee. Number 4, seat down when finished, Lee. Number 5, after using the toilet, wash your hands before beeping the noses of the elders, Lee. Rule number 6, we aim to please, you aim to please, or we aim to maim, Lee. Number 7, if the toilet water splashes you, don't mention it from the pulpit, Lee. And the final rule, number 8, only one person on the stool at a time. Coincidentally, it was in the bathroom that Lee nearly met his demise a couple years ago. He fainted, and when he woke up, the tourniquet Vivian put on his neck was too tight. Poor Vivian. Did she even know what you were doing in my office that day, the last time you were filling the pulpit for me? Did she know my study was remodeled with 7 rolls of toilet paper? You could at least have used the cheap 1-ply, transparent, 3-inch wide stuff we put in the layman's bathroom. But no. You had to use the imported lamb's fleece tissue from the private stash in my executive washroom. Well, the joke is on you, my friend. I lovingly gathered up those 7 rolls, and they're sitting in a basket next to the stool, and I think of you every time I use it. When I think of the children that sat at your feet at all the years of church camp, Lee, when I think of those wide-eyed lambs listening to you in our churches, not to mention the kids at the children's home, and your own dear grandchildren, Lee, what about the children? Poor Vivian. Poor Vivian. Imprisoned with the likes of you, week after week, year after hopeless year. There ought to be a hotline she can call. I advise you to spend some time in the scriptures, mister. Do you even own a Bible? Well, I'm glad they got you to come tonight, Lee. They told you this was a roast. They told you this was a party. They told you it was a retirement dinner. Well, they lied to you, my friend. This is an intervention. Well, seriously, I'll try to keep the nice comments short. I don't want to ruin this party. But I first met Lee back in the 70s, probably 40 years ago at Great Lakes Bible College. I don't think he remembers it, but he exposed me at the chapel service that day for having mismatched socks. And it's been downhill the rest of the way. But now in some of the toughest times in my ministry, Lee was there. He's been generous and kind when he's not toilet papering my office. He's been a great friend. He's worked a lot of years at camp for me, and I'll probably call you my friend. God bless you. I can't tell you what is going on here. I'm sorry. No. It pertains to the time he roasted me. And that's all I can say. Are you ashamed of him? Yes.
We were ashamed of him long before the slippers. Yeah, Lee, one of the things about Lee is if you know him for any time at all, he talks about the children's home. He took his job at the children's home very, very seriously. And it was the first thing that he always told strangers, actually. He would say, "Hi, my name is Lee Bracey. I run the children's home. Can I get a discount?" I gathered up my papers.
Did I?
Yeah. You just pull randomly. I got a bunch more names to mispronounce. Starting with the next one. Which is unfortunately H-E-I-N-E. There we go. All right, good.
I met Mr. Bracey when he came on grounds. I was already there. I won't tell you how many years I've been there, but the gentleman who brought me on grounds was Lee Strang. He was over there somewhere, hiding over there. I haven't seen him in years. Oh, that's because he's old. Not like me. Okay. Just a few notes from me on things that I remember with Mr. Bracey. First thing, one of the first days at the Woodburn Christian Children's Home, Lee stated he gained some wonderful knowledge about the community. While at Bob's in Woodburn, Mr. Bracey said that the local had shared that it's getting to be, in order to be a farmer, you got to have a pewter. That was 34 years ago. That was pretty unique in those days. That bit of knowledge set Lee into action. He's been pewter literate ever since. Another lasting memory dealt with a moment at the attorney's office. We were all gathered down at an attorney's office downtown at Fort Wayne in preparation for testimony about the respondents. All of us were sequestered, which means we only went in one at a time. Vivian was there. She remembers it well. I walked in, took a seat. Nobody knew who I was. Still to this day, probably don't remember who I was, but that's okay. I listened to the entire testimony. I even testified at the end. And I've seen numerous of the people since then, and they always remember our board of directors, the board of directors from the church, and the board of directors from the children's home. Last but not least was a moment Woodburn Christian Children's Home had a runaway. And the runaway is in this room. And he's the reason I became involved at the children's home. For you people who don't know, I'm the psychologist at the children's home. I'm a retired school psychologist from East Al. I had a young man that decided he wanted some freedom, so he took off. And I got a call from Mr. Bracey. Meet me at Diplomat Apartments. Down there I went. And there was Lee, the program director, some guy named Denny Baker, I don't know, Legacy Fund, something. Right away I said to Baker, I said, Dave, you probably need to go to the back door because I think this kid will probably slip out the back door. So we rewrapped on the front door and sure enough, opened the back door and into Baker's arms ran the culprit. And lastly, I introduced the kids at the children's home to a game. And Mr. Bracey asked me whether I was going to discuss this, and I thought, you know what, I probably ought to. It had something to do with reducing aggression with the kids. So I got out some 2-liter bottles, popped the bottoms off of them, capped the top, took the kids out in the front yard, and let them play beat the willies out of each other. And as luck would have it, for those people who are familiar with our present society, these were injected through a mold. And at the end of it was a little nipple. You know what a nipple can do to the human eye? Well, let me tell you, Mr. Bracey has never forgotten telling me about the nipple. Okay? Actually, one of the kids hit one of the kids with the bottle. Instant red eye, solid blood. That wasn't the good part. The good part was when we took him into the hospital to have him looked at. Mr. Bracey had a little discussion on what should be his demeanor when he goes in there. What shouldn't he do? And what's the first thing he does? Blames, who do you blame, Lee?
The culprit.
Yeah, and who was that?
You.
Oh, yeah, but he also blamed, I believe he blamed the house parent too. And just interesting moments that I have in my history. I've been there for a lot of years. I still work there, by the way. I mow yard now. They've got me to that point. I go up and sit on a tractor and mow. Just for my words for Lee and Vivian Bracey and all their family that are here, I've known them all for years and years and years. I love them all very dearly. And I hope that your future holds nothing but kindness and goodness for you and for everybody you lay hands on.
All right. We made it a lot farther into this before the word nipple came up than I expected, since you're the subject of this. Another preacher, Fred Lab. Fred Lab is coming up. Fred Lab, I'm only pronouncing the first B.
I'm sorry, Mike, but Lee has never been a one-man kind of guy. You remember Lee? That night at Rock Lake under the moon. Out on the dock. We didn't have our first kiss that night, but we did hold hands for a long time. We did keep our nipples covered, though. Hey, you presented the material. Let me tell you how I met Lee. It was at Rock Lake. No, Lake James, I'm sorry. It was at Lake James. And I was a dean there, and I had a student that was my first experience with the Woodburn Christian Children's Home, having students. And there was this, I don't remember her name, but this young lady that was a little bit of a pistol. When Lee showed up, he wasn't working. He just literally wasn't working. He just showed up. And, I think he wanted lunch. It was free. And so this young lady, he was giving boat rides or something. He brought the boat, and he was giving kids from camp a ride on the boat. I didn't understand what he was charging them gas money for. But anyway, there was this one girl that was giving him a bit of a fit, and he was a little rude to her. This was my first time meeting Lee Bracey, and I thought, hey, she's my student here. You go home, old fella. And so when I found out his name, I was actually surprised when I heard Lee Bracey. I named him Lee Abrasive. And that's what we call him. But here the truth is this, my first impression of Lee Bracey, I looked up and thought, who invited Wilford Brimley to St. James? Every time I have seen and introduced Lee Bracey, it's always, hey, have you met Wilford Brimley? Hello, I'm Wilford Brimley from Quaker Oats, also from Liberty Medical Supply. Lee once came to church up in Lake Odessa, because we had a young man that was considered, when he first called me and asked me to do this, and said, hey, would you please be part of this roast? I thought, I've never done a roast, but be part of a roast. And he gives you 30 minutes to use. It's hard to limit the 30 minutes of material. But anyway, I said, Lee, what are you going to do when you retire? And he says, I got a list of things that I'm going to do. And I said, is there a vasectomy on the list? I asked if I could use that, didn't I? He was back there, he said yes. And then he goes, oh, I better add that to the list. So if you see him limping as he's walking around. Anyway, he came up to meet a young man at our church that was interested in being part of the Woodburn Christian Children's Home. Lee came up and spent the day with him. Do you remember that meeting, Lee? And the memory is slipping. But anyway, he says, he leaves, and the next day I meet with the young man, and I say, what do you think? It's a pretty good place for you to go, don't you think? And the kid was like, there's no way I'm going there. And I said, well, why not? He said, A, I hate oatmeal, and B, I want my finger pricked every day. He never did come back. On my way down here from near Grand Rapids, I was thinking, what must Lee be feeling right this moment when so many people that he loves are around him and they're talking about him and they're sharing and they're speaking on his behalf. And as I crossed into Indiana, I realized quickly that my 32-ounce big belt needed out. And I realized that's exactly what Lee Bracey is feeling right now. You see, at Lee's age, he has to visit the bathroom much more frequently now. However, I know he prepared for today's celebration. I have it on good authority that he doubled up on his depends. Oh, good, I see we're okay. He's using a catheter. He probably got it from Liberty Medical Supply. Not so loud back there. If you know anything about Lee Bracey, you know that he has an affinity for maps. He doesn't just enjoy collecting them and displaying them. He's become a bit of a cartographer himself. I had to Google that. That means somebody that makes maps. I made this all up on the drive down here, I swear. He's taken to making his own maps. There's a very special map that Lee Bracey has made. He keeps it on the nightstand. No. As a matter of fact, he drew it in glow-in-the-dark paint. You see, he used it many times a night. It is a map to the bathroom. But when Lee is feeling very adventurous, he pulls out that special map that he keeps in the nightstand. No, it's not the one in the downstairs bathroom. Lee, it's the special one that leads to your favorite tree outside. That usually doesn't end well because it doesn't have a lighted path back and usually ends up with the neighbor swearing at him. Let me tell you, you ever wonder where his affinity for maps began? It began at his very first ministry. Lee was asked at his very first funeral. And he didn't know the area well, but he was excited to do it. And they give him directions to the cemetery. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and he starts driving. He gets lost because at this point in his life, he doesn't understand directions or how to read a map. And he gets lost. And now he's really lost, and he's about an hour and a half late getting to the cemetery. But he learned that, you know what, you still have to do your job. And he pulls into the cemetery, and there is nobody around but two men, and each of them have a shovel, and they're filling in a hole. But Lee, because he's responsible, decides he's going to go over and he's going to preach this funeral sermon. And he goes over, and as he goes over to preach the sermon, the two men, they head over and they stand under the shade tree, and little old poor Lee, he preaches his heart out. He preaches his heart out. When he's done, he works up a tear for somebody he doesn't even know, and he walks back to his car feeling pretty proud. And the one guy looks at the other guy and he says, do you think we should have told him that that's just a septic tank? From then on, Lee took a serious interest in Max. We could do this all day long. But let me end this by speaking of Lee Bracey and his generosity. Lee has a place, used to have a place, a cabin that he would use for pastors. Is there things about the cabin that I don't know? I'm sure the other roasters may know. But anyway, he would always invite me to hey, you're welcome to use the cabin. You know, I know things are difficult in ministry, and if you need to get away, you can use the cabin. And so that never really seemed to work out. But then there was this time that it worked out, and I wanted to use the cabin with my wife and just to get away. And I said, hey, Lee, can we use that cabin? And he says, well, we have sold the cabin, but I made it a point that whenever somebody asks me that, I keep an extra $100 in my wallet, and I make sure they get a hotel room for the night. Lee, Mariah and I want to use the cabin this week. I want to tell you. Thank you. I want to tell you.
Me too.
I see it's no longer $100. Let me tell you this. All sincerity, I want to read you a scripture. It says in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run the race with perseverance, the race that's marked out for us. Lee Bracey has been cheering me on for more than 20 years. I am a better husband, a better father, a better pastor, a better friend, and a better man because of Lee Bracey. So as much as I would like to stand here and continue to joke, I want you to know that I am so thankful that God has put you in my life so many years ago, my friend. I do have deep love for you, and I appreciate it very much.
That you take with you and you can
Thank you, my friend.
That's wet. That's wet. All right, I was just reminded of a story. Lee called me up a few years ago. You remember when he called me up and asked me to go to?
No.
Lee called me up. He called me up one afternoon, which was unusual because Lee doesn't call me that often. And when he does, it's usually to say, Branyan, I don't like you very much, and you smell odd. But he said, I've got 2 tickets to go and see Jimmy Buffett at Deer Creek. You remember this? To go see Jimmy Buffett at Deer Creek. So he said, you want to go with? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'll go, but why are you asking me? Because I'm not a real concert guy. And Lee said, I wrote it down, I'll never forget, he says, all my real friends are on the board at the Christian's home. All my real friends are on the board at the Woodburn Christian home, and I don't want them to find out about this. What are they going to do, fire you? All right, Don Fleshman. Don Fleshman, is he here? Oh, right here. Don's coming up, too.
I'm glad you got my name right. Mr. Oaks.
Oh, see.
Neutral friend. Yeah. I met Lee Bracey at Rockley Christian Assembly back in the 80s. That was a long time ago. So we've been friends for a long, long time. There are just a couple things I want to mention. One was anytime they needed a special offering at Woodburn Christian Children's Home, I'd say, Lee, about that cabin. So he'd give me $100 to go to the Christian's home, and my name would say his, but it would still get there. So that's the thing. One of my big memories of Lee Bracey
We had our vacation Bible school at Fairlight Christian Church in Niles, and we collected all kind of, I think we call it TPing Woodburn Christian Children's Home. So we collect all these paper products and everything, because I think they go through quite a bit there. And I had my van filled with these, and so I was going to meet Lee in Angola and bring that all over, and we're going to switch loads. And most of the time when we meet Lee somewhere, it's at a restaurant. And it happened to be Bob Evans. That's right. It was. And it was in July. It was hot. The next day was the auction before they moved it to October, and this may be the reason they moved it to October. But we were sitting there eating, and I remember this so clearly. Lee orders biscuits and gravy with a side of sausage patties. And as we're sitting there eating, he says, I can feel my left ventricle slamming shut. And guess what? It did. The next day after the auction, he ends up in the hospital with a heart attack. So that'll teach you to steal.
That's funny.
Yeah. That will teach you to steal your brother-in-law's line, by the way. And I don't know how I got roped into this, but Lee, several years ago, said, Don, would you be on the board of the children's home? And I'm thinking, that's, I'm 2.5 hours away. But I told him yes. And so the first meeting I came to was in February. And we started meeting at 7 o'clock. And we got done at 11:15. And I thought, what have I gotten myself into? The last meeting I went to, by the way, we got done at 8:30, Bill. So we have worked on that since Lee's leaving. I have one other thing. I picked up a few phrases from Lee Bracey. One of them I've used quite recently about Vivian. She looks pretty, but she's mean. And I use that quite a bit. He is pretty generous, so I have to get the waitress at Bob's restaurant in Woodburn to sneak me the bill, because he'll take it every time. And so, but I have learned how to respond to a waitress when the waitress says, can I do anything else for you? And what's he say? Keep you loyal out of golf and help me understand women. And in closing, he always says when we depart, smell you later.
Well, he doesn't have a heart anymore. We mentioned it. One of the things that is also a hallmark of Lee Bracey is that he does love kids. He does love, he has a heart for kids, for the children. Yeah, he does. He cares about kids. The psychiatrist didn't know that. I'm in the wrong line of work. But yeah, his.
Graduated up to a lawnmower now.
Graduated up to a lawnmower?
That's right.
Your time is over. He's giving me his present yet. He likes. I still got the other pair. But actually, this is a little Bracey fact that many of you may not know, but his own children, Lee's own children, were actually his idea. They were. Vivian just wanted to cuddle. All right. Gil? Is Gil here? Gil, where's Where's Gil at? All right, you're up next, Gil.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on down. Come on down. This is a past Woodburn Christian Children's Home family member, right?
I am.
You're a family member, right?
How's everybody doing? You guys okay? Need a stretch? Everybody good? No? All right. When, Lee asked me a few weeks ago, a month ago, to be a part of this, I was honored to do that. But then I started thinking, it's inherently dangerous to ask a child of the children's home to come and do your roast. And then it's also inherently dangerous to ask a former employee that worked underneath you. And so he asked me, who's both, to come and do a roast for you. So here you go. I remember when I first met Lee and Vivian Bracey. They came to be the administrators of the children's home. And I remember my first thought, as most kids do, I was a sophomore in high school, and you kind of size people up. And so I saw, I go, he's about the same height as I am, and he looks pretty harmless. So I thought, we can work with this guy. But I quickly realized that this man was a manipulator with young people. And what he would commonly do is come alongside usually a young fellow that's been mischievous, and would put their arm around them and say, now son, and then continue to explain what the young man had done wrong and what he needs to do differently. Well, I saw this coming a mile away. And I realized that my son talk would come at a time where I did something really foolish with a couple of twins that were at the children's home. Back in the day, they would let us run wild at the children's home. Sorry, kids, it's not that way anymore. But they would, at the summertime, they would say, you guys go and come back before dark. That's all we ask to do. And I'm not making this up. We would ride our bikes to Antwerp, Ohio, and to Auburn, Indiana, and they'd let us go. And okay, maybe not Auburn, but we did go to Corbin Corners once. Well, on one of those trips, it's the summertime, and it's kind of boring in the middle of Indiana, in the middle of nowhere. We decided, the twins and I decided that it was time for us to see if we could push some car-sized boulders, because we were young men, and we see if we can push them into a farmer's culvert, just to see if we can walk across. And we could. And so we did. And Lee, wanting to keep the neighbors happy, found out quickly that we had done this. And so he put his arms around us and he says, now boys. And we realized that we were in trouble right then and there. That was the first of many teachable moments that I received. Now, if you know that word, that's a word that Lee Bracey loves to use, teachable moments. He will not pass up a teachable moment to anybody. I remember my senior year, as I was afforded the opportunity to drive Vivian's Cutlass. You remember the white Cutlass? And I was pretty excited because I was driving Vivian's Cutlass until I put a dent inside of it with my body. I actually ran into the car, physically damaging the car with my own body. And so Lee comes beside me and go, now son. And then it starts to explain to me how I'll have to pay for getting the car fixed. And it was another teachable moment that I received. And so the teachable moments continue to happen even after I graduated high school. And even as I got into my own ministry as a youth minister, not all the teachable moments were positive. Some of them I learned from your mistakes. One of the greatest mistakes that Lee has ever done with me was, he knows what this is. I was just about ready to finish up my tenure at Pleasant View Church of Christ as the youth minister. And it was a Wednesday night, and I had the students over, as I normally do, and we were doing youth group. And Lee just happened to come in at the end of the study. He bounces into the house and goes, hey, have you told the kids yet that you're leaving? And I go, no, I haven't, thanks. And so I spent the rest of the evening,
They know now.
They know now, they did. I spent the rest of the evening mopping up a bunch of angry young students. So I put that one in my pocket and said, don't do that in your ministry. Not wise. So this is the deal. Teachable moments continue for Lee and Vivian. They've continued for me and my wife and our family for many, many years. Teachable moments as a young minister trying to figure out how to do ministry well, how to enter a church well, how to leave well, how to minister well. I will always cherish when you come up to me and say, now son, I need to tell you something. Teachable moments will happen as a family with my kids. Now, I have a daughter who's learning how to drive, and I remember as she's driving down the road, I asked her to do something crazy, something that was asked of me 34 years ago. When Lee Bracey pulls me alongside of Grable Road and says, I want you to go into the burn. I want you to go into the side of the road. And I'm like, what say you, man? That is, we're doing 55 miles an hour and he wants me to go ahead and put it in the ditch. And so I do what I'm told because I don't want, now son, kind of a conversation. So I start bringing the wheel over and sure enough it digs into the gravel and he doesn't tell me anything. He just grabs the wheel, brings it back on the road, and I about died. But he was showing me what happens when you pull off into the side of a road. And if you're not ready for that, you're going to end up on the other side of traffic. You all know what I'm talking about. And so here's my daughter, and I'm doing the same thing to her. I'm like, now, honey, I want you to pull off to the side of the road. And she looks at me and says, what say you, man? And she does it, and I teach her. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm turning into Lee Bracey. I can't believe this is happening. But teachable moments. Teachable moments. Now I give teachable moments to a young minister that I get to pour my life into. Now I get to do teachable moments to a congregation that I get to love. Now I get to do teachable moments to my children and to my family. And that's the beauty of all of this, isn't it? That's the beauty of all of it. To be around long enough to see it all make sense. See, it all makes sense. It is the gentle beauty of a legacy. And this is another thing that Lee will talk about. So I want to thank you, Lee and Vivian, for being mom and dad to me for many years. I want to thank you for all the teachable moments that I willingly took and a lot of them that I did not. And I'm certain that just because we're having this gathering, that the teachable moments will not end, but will continue. Thank you, brother. I love you.
Thanks, Gil. Lee still drives about 30% of the time on the burn. So committed he gets to that teachable moment and keeps it going. All right, up next, your granddaughter, Autumn Hulbert.
Alright, so when he asked me to do this, I went ahead and consulted his 6 favorite people and asked them, what are your least favorite, most annoying, funniest, weirdest things about Grandpa? And in our top secret, no parents, no grandparents allowed group message, they sent me some things. So, I won't tell you what they individually said, we'll just remain anonymous under the collective name, the grandchildren. Grandkids were made to it starts to get too cool, just play it cool. Take your hearing aids out of your ears. You need those aids 'cause you're super old. Hey Grandpa, thanks for the books that we sold back to half-price books. Next time you decide to get me a gift, I've read Narnia 5,000 times. Speaking of books, you've read a lot. You're smarter than most people in this room. So can you explain to me, when you're hungry, why you make Grandma microwave your soup? You only know to do it yourself. Hey Grandma, it's not all bad. There's that one thing that gives us hope. The greatest gift you've given us. You know what I mean. Thanks for globes and globes and globes and globes and globes. I got a globe. You got a globe. We all got globes. Y'all can sing. Globes, globes. I got a globe. You got a globe. We all got globes. Can I just see if you received a globe or a book from Lee Bracey? Can you raise your hand real quick?
One grandchild, two grandchildren. Sit down. Got work to do.
You told me I was the only one that got a globe, too. Oh, Branyan, this is special. It's really special for me. Lee shows his appreciation to his good friends by giving us an antiquated navigation tool. And I don't want you to stand up and tell me the whole backstory and the symbolism behind the globe again. You know, I got it. But I have a GPS. Doesn't work perfectly. But you know what? Google Maps has never taken me so far off course that I've ever said, hey, where's that globe that Bracey gave me? Jeff Bush. Jeff Bush is up next.
Hi. I'm Lee's nephew. We're from the other side of we're the nice side of the family. We also have many globes. But when it was called and I was asked, could you come and tell some really mean jokes about your uncle, I was like, I'm kind of uncomfortable with that idea. You know, it's going to be really hard because he's so slow, he's not going to get any of it. It's just really, it's hard to feel sorry for old people. And just don't, you know, this is your party! These people are here for you!
your applesauce? Okay. It's so sad, you know. Actually, we did take a lot of pride in today as a family because there's a lot of men in our family that are in ministry and they're not in an official ministry role. Like all the guys are in service in the church somewhere. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the work of the children's home. And you might think, I just want to give you some background, is Uncle Lee was in preaching ministry for some time before he went into work with the children's home. And you might think that that's because he had a real heart for kids. And that is not it. He is just a terrible preacher. In fact, in all of his preaching, he only ever had one conversion in the time that he preached. And I think it was at Boulevard in Toledo. He was preached his heart out. It was his best sermon that he ever preached. And the chairman of the elders came forward and converted to Islam right there. I just don't feel like that's what you were going for. So probably good move. Moving out of that. But the real reason that I'm here is just to share this simple truth. Lee Bracey ruined my life. And that is saying something because he was barely involved at all. He was basically very efficient. It speaks to the real potency of his illness. So, true story, by the way. When I was in second grade, yeah, he told me 2 jokes. And he was like, tell everybody these jokes, little Jeffy, they're totally appropriate. The first joke is about a little Indian boy looking out of the teepee with his parents explaining to him the meaning of the names of the other people in the tribe. And the punchline of the joke is, why do you ask these things, vomiting dog? I think that was the PG version. I think it was the PG version. No, it's not the point. The point is I told this joke a lot. The second joke, I'll tell you the full version of the joke. The joke was, I heard you found a cure for the common cold, or they found a cure for the common cold. You drink 2 pints of prune juice. It doesn't cure the cold, but you think twice before you sneeze. And he gives me his 2 jokes. He's like, tell everybody these jokes. So I went and I told them to my second grade teacher, Mrs. Dolan. And she's like, oh, and I don't get these jokes, by the way. I tell her the jokes, and she's like, where did you hear these jokes? And I'm like, my uncle. And she's like, we need to meet your uncle. And then but what happened was, I got carted around to the other teachers, who's like, Jeff has some jokes he'd like to tell you. They're from his uncle. And I'm like, thanks for sullying my reputation all through grade school. But the biggest way that he ruined my life is just by existing. And what I mean by that is I am cursed with the scourge of Bracey blood. My mom is Lee's sister, which means I have just as much Bracey DNA in my body as Tammy and Jerry, his children. But I don't have the same last name, which is a little like having the Ebola virus but not having to tell anybody. And I'm sick inside, but I don't have to broadcast my shame on my driver's license. That's basically what it is. For example, in the 8th grade, my basketball coach comes to me and he says, Bush, you got size 11 feet. I was 5'10". In the 8th grade, you got size 11 feet. Your dad is 6'4". You're going to be this super tall basketball player. And I'm like, yeah, I am. 2 years later, hadn't grown a bit. By the time I graduated, dropped out of basketball, I was 5'10" and a half with gigantic feet. Guess why? Right over here! Thanks, tainted Vivian Bracey DNA. And now as I look at my 42-year-old body, I now realize that I am basically turning into you. So the next question I have is, at what point am I going to turn into an irrelevant, pudgy, diabetic Ron Burgundy wannabe? No, I'm serious. At what point am I going to start my 30-year-long midlife crisis? Masked by a delusion that I am a nautical sailing expert because I bought 2 world maps on eBay and an authentic ship wheel from Pier 1 Imports. When does that happen? By the way, Magellan, if you want to circumnavigate the world and live the island dweller lifestyle, just keep in mind, if you're idolizing people in that world, that Jimmy's last name is Buffett, not Buffet. I think you might have missed the memo on that. How long do I have? Is it 5 minutes? 5 minutes? 5 minutes to tell everything that's wrong with Lee Bracey is like trying to print War and Peace on an index card. So there's not enough space or time. Actually, what I need to say in here is that absolutely none of that is true. Well, some things were true. The jokes were true. That all that happened, and it was a lot of fun. And there's so many stories we could tell. But I do want to say I'm tremendously proud of the work that Uncle Lee has done. I want to say this about him. My mom is like this sweet little nice, really, just very quiet, and her brother's very different, you know, and if you've ever done the personality talks, there's like cross the box people, you know, and I'm probably more on Mom's side of that. And I so much appreciate the giftedness that he has used in the way he has, because he's shrewd, he's a good businessman, and he could have used those things to live the Jimmy Buffett lifestyle, right? You could have your yacht and you could be wasting away in Margaritaville, eating a cheeseburger in paradise and having a great old time. No kidding. No kidding. I think he did it. But instead, you chose to invest in the least of these. And we have a verse we throw around the church a lot. We love to talk about James 1:27, which talks about true religion, you know that passage. And it's to help widows and orphans in their distress and to keep yourself pure from the world. Which is 2 things that are really in tension with one another if you think about it. You know, if you're going to help orphans and do the work that Uncle Lee's done, you're going to get your hands dirty. You're going to get in some really ugly situations with folks. Oh, but keep yourself pure from the world at the same time. And so there's a tension in that. And Uncle Lee, you and Aunt Vivian chose to live in that tension in your ministry. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm also very proud of my Bracey heritage, by the way. In fact, Uncle Lee, other than my own dad, who wishes so desperately he and my mom could be here tonight, the most influential man in my life was your dad. And 24 years he's been gone. And I still miss him. And what I can tell you today is that he would be very proud of this day. He would be very proud of you, just like we all are. So God bless you. Thanks for coming.
It never occurred to me to blame you for your horribly malformed nephew. I thought that was Art's fault. Bob Hickle. Bob Hickle? Yeah, another alumni or family member from the home, from Silver's home.
Where do I begin? Well, first of all, Lee called me this week and reminded me that I was one of the roasters. He asked me if I was ready. I said, yeah, he had one more question for me. He asked if I was going to watch the royal wedding this weekend, and he was looking for somebody to watch it with him. And I told him, no, I'd rather have a colonoscopy than. So my time with Lee goes back in 1989, and let's see, he wanted me to tell the shoe story This was one to tell us the shoe story. This was probably in 1993 after I graduated from high school and I moved out on my own. I was living life to the fullest, I guess, and I think this, not a roast necessarily about him, but I think he roasted me with this. So anyway, I was out doing my thing and I think I was living large, and I bought a pair of Michael Jordan shoes that were $150. And like 2 days later, I got a speeding ticket, which came up to $150. So I was thinking, how am I gonna pay for this? So with my tail tucked between my legs, I called, I said, Lee, this is what happened. I got a speeding ticket, so it's gonna either pay the speeding ticket or pay my rent. But if I don't pay the speeding ticket, they're gonna suspend my license. He said, well, come out Thursday and we'll talk. And unbeknownst to me, they were having a board meeting that night. So I show up and they had this all planned out before I got there that they were gonna help me with this, but I didn't know this, so I was like I felt like I was a prisoner being interrogated under the cop spotlight, back and forth. So, and I sat in this chair with all these board members around me, and so I had to explain my story to what happened. And I said, well, we agreed to help you, but we want something in return. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll pay it back. And I'm like, well, that's fine. And unbeknownst to me, I wore my $150 shoes, right? And I went home in my stocking feet. So they had me, but I eventually got those shoes back. But sadly to say, a few years later, I hardly wore them, and I had a dog at the time. And I came home from work one day, and they were no longer $150. So, but in hindsight, my time with Lee Bracey and Vivian and the children's home has been great, and I've never lost my connection there. And I work for a local pool company, and Lee asked me to come and open and close his pool at the end of the year, the beginning of the year, and he was asking how things were going. I said, well, things are going good. My wife and I have 6 kids, and my oldest daughter, she's a typical teenager, and explained it to him and what's going on, and he looked at me and says, problem, son? So I really don't have anything to roast him about, but I'm just grateful for his time and Vivian's time at the children's home, and I wouldn't be the person I am today without the Woodburn Christian Children's Home. And so thank you, Lee and Vivian, Dave and Kendra, and everybody else, and Joe. And when your time comes to roast, I have some stuff to do. I like Lee. All right, I'll sit down.
I was going to get up after you were done, before you finished the story. I was going to get up and say, okay, if anybody's ever received a $150 pair of shoes from Lee Bracey. He gave it back to me, I guess. You remember our first colonoscopy together? Doug Bradburn, kid from camp. Kid from Lee's camp.
Lee Bracey was a kid from northern Michigan. Wanted to go preaching, so he did. I found out his first congregation, things didn't start out so well. His first sermon delivered, stands back at the auditorium. People come through, and one fella comes up. Sitting through one of your sermons is like watching paint dry. Lee's full of grace. He said, bless you, brother. Thank you. Next Sunday, same fella comes through. You have the grooming habits of a chimpanzee. Well, thank you, brother. Appreciate that. Next Sunday, your breath smells like you brush your teeth with cheese. All right, Lee's had enough. He goes to the elders, tells them a story. The elders just chuckle. I say, oh, that's just George. Don't worry, he's harmless. He just repeats everything he hears. Well, you've heard the stories, at least pretty good one-on-one, but when it comes to preaching, his chops weren't always so good. And so he had to work, and work, and work, and he did. And guess what? Before you know it, each sermon was better than the next. Well, Lee Bracey comes to Indiana, of course, and that's where I met up with him. My first dorm dad's here, Lee Strang. At church camp, Lee Strang is my first dorm dad. And godly man, love you. He, before lights out, we would have an object lesson. Something with meaning to help us mature as young men. My second dorm dad was another Lee, Lee Bracey. Well, I thought that's what we do at church camp, so at lights out time, we kind of gather expecting some nuggets of knowledge, something to bring us closer to God. And he says, boys, get ready, we're going to the girls' dorms. I said, little kid, girls, no, not girls. Yeah, we're going to the girls' dorm. Panty raid! What's a panty? So, anyway, I had a famous grandmother, Helen Bradburn, Grandma Helen, a fixture. Having your grandma a fixture at camp isn't good because you become a target of certain people. We were having the skit night, and they couldn't figure out what to do for the skit. Lee Bracey comes up and says, do the Viper. The Viper. Have Bradburn do it. Okay. Well, here's what the Viper is. There's like 20 kids on stage. Somebody comes running across. The Viper's 10 miles behind me. A few kids run off and scream. Another one comes up. The Viper's 5 miles behind me. A few more kids scream. Then someone comes out. The Viper's right behind me. They all scream and run out. And then I come out with a roll of toilet paper streaming behind me saying, I'm the Viper. Would you like a Viper? Molding my self-esteem. The next year we had serious skits. I got to play Paul and Silas in prison. We're practicing. Bracey comes by. Not right. Not right. Disappears. He comes back with 2 huge markers, red and black. He comes up behind me and starts on my back. I've got all this marker on my back. Permanent marker. I had to go home and explain to my mom why I was all red and black for the next 10 years. Plus, Lee Strang, wonderful man. Lee Bracey invents a stool. Harmless looking stool, right? And then he has Mr. Strang sit on the stool, blindfolds him, gives him a broom, puts a cup underneath, says, the kids are going to come get the cup, you use the broom. What he didn't tell him is it was electrified. Lee Strang's trying to keep all this up, and Lee Bracey with, well, someone said catty canary grin, manure eating grin. Shocks the man. Stands up, pain. Guess what? He sat back down. So what does Lee Bracey do? Zaps him a second time. So, anyway, those are the kind of, I go on about camp stories. But let's go on about Lee Bracey and his preaching, because that's not talked about as much. His work with the children's home, his destruction of lives, that's all been talked about pretty well. We'll fast forward about 20 years. I'm sitting in a congregation, and we're blessed with Lee Bracey giving the sermon. And he was really feeling the Spirit. And it's a wonderful sermon, the baptism of Jesus. Wonderful story, right? Wonderful story. And Lee Bracey is in rare form. And I'm sitting back admiring. Wow, this is really good. I've never heard him this well. And all of a sudden, Lee proclaims, as best he could, and Jesus was baptized in the John! I sat up. What new doctrine is this? I've never heard this. And Lee Bracey, realizing that we probably weren't ready for that nugget of truth, cleaned it up by saying, well, of course, Jesus was baptized in John's Jordan. John the Baptist, land baron, had the whole river to himself. Well, at the end of that, I couldn't really kind of let that go. And so as I strode to the back of the sanctuary, there was Lee, looking like that. Kind of shaking his head, smiling like, okay, here it comes. Well, the only thing I could think to say was, apparently they were making toilet bigger in Jesus' day. But Lee Bracey has been a very influential person. How many people have heard the duress story? The duress? No? No. Well, Lee Bracey, he tries to reach out to everyone he meets, right? He tries to show God's love to everyone. He was at the restaurant and cutting up as usual, and the waitress comes, and everyone's kind of coming. Basically said, "You're doing a great job, especially under such duress." And the waitress gets this look of horror on her face, stands back and looks. "What did you say about my dress?" And Lee Bracey realizes, oh no, I'm going to get fired for that. No, I'm duress. It's a word meaning stress and strain. That's Lee, folks. If there's a mouth, he's ready to put a foot in it. But one thing Lee used to always say, and I'm sure you all heard this, if you ever tried to discuss doctrine and argue a point, he would say, "I'm in sales. Take it up with management." Well, my friend, I'm going to disagree. You've been in the service department. You have touched the lives of so many people. You have been a servant in the truest sense. He's been there for me. I was in long-term care, so we would sit and talk about our love of the state and personal problems, death of my son. He was there. Yes, I got a globe. But it came at a time when I really needed it. And I really appreciate that. And so when you think of God's love, I like to think of Jesus sitting with 12 disciples goofing on Peter. Now, if Lee Bracey was there, God would pick him up, or Jesus would pick on him too. Because he's showing God's love. He truly is. Vivian, thank you for all that you've done. I know that you couldn't do it. He gets the glory, you get the goop. And thank you so much. But Lee, God's smiling because you are his son. God's smiling because you are his name. Love you.
We had a last minute pile on, and I don't blame anybody for wanting to jump in and hack on Lee. Dave Turner, where's Dave? Dave Turner's coming. What's that? Does he have a nickname? What is it? Pancake Turner? Why would you hesitate to tell us that?
Because he used to call me that all the time. I'll try to keep it shorter. I have two things I want to talk about briefly. We became very good friends in somewhere about 1974, 73, something like that. When I was a brand new young kid elder in our church, I was the first elder that was under 50, and I was only 25. And I suggested that we needed a youth minister, or needed a youth minister, and we went after Lee and brought him over. We've been very good friends ever since then. But that young youth minister and this young elder used to sit around and talk about those old fart elders. And look around this group. And you're now the old farts, buddy. Second item. I'm an old, semi-retired wastewater chemist and microbiologist. Back around the middle 80s, Woodburn had a packaged wastewater treatment plant that, I'll be nice and simply say, it was like a septic tank with no top, that you pump the air in the bottom and hope to get good water out. I got snockered into being the official certified operator in charge of the paperwork and providing all the tests freebie and all that good stuff. And pretty soon a letter came from IDEM that was one of those nasty grams. They're prepared to assess us fines, I don't remember, it was a couple $100,000. Whoa.
we need to have a meeting. Now, in my 50-year career with INEM, you know, every once in a while, I had never been to the 14th floor, and I've never been since. We, two attorneys for the state of Indiana wanted to talk with us, and we went up, and I believe it to be the commissioner's office. We both walked into this office, a huge office. The one wall over here was straight across the street from the Capitol building, and the other wall was glass, looking north in Indianapolis. And these two young female attorneys, which back then, women's liberty time, they were ready to take us to cleaners. They were armed for bear. And I got chewed on for a little while. And pretty soon they said, well, tell us a little about I forgot the other one. I always screw my stories up. In the car, in the parking lot, we had a prayer, you know, we prayed. We needed to pray about it. We're starting to get out of the car, and old Bracey says, shall I bring my little storybook program now? He and I have both been techies since before techies was cool. And he pulled out his, I don't remember whether it was a Betamax or a VHS, but he had a program for the Christian, for the children's home. He brought it in with him. I thought, oh, we'll never get around to that. Well, when she asked, can you tell us a little bit more about the children's home? Lee, as Lee would always say, or always be, he's ready to present the story. He said, well, if you don't mind, let me show you a little video. Here we are, up there being grilled for a tremendous amount of money. And Lee's showing a promotional for the children's home. They dropped the charges as long as we would put this mound system in, which is the mound system we have today. And there were stories about that went on over in Allen County with the engineers and with the guys who put that in. It solved a tremendous problem in the stinky wastewater plant. But one of the most amazing things about it was, we got back out of the car and both of us are hooping and hollering and ready to party. And a few weeks later, he got a check from that attorney.
And he sent that attorney a globe. Holly Nelson. She's still here?
She couldn't make it.
Oh, she couldn't make it? Okay. Then we're going to move on to Ron Collins, board member. Ron Collins.
I'm just thinking, aren't you glad we're a Christian group? Wow. All that bathroom humor I had to get up and go just a while ago. Well, I do. And it felt so good to stand up and walk around a little bit. I'm not going to suggest you walk around. Why don't you stand up and stretch a little, okay? I think that's a good idea. Does that feel good, though? All right, have a seat. That's enough. Well, I've heard it said that you can tell when you're getting older because your body begins to make the same sounds as your coffee maker. Have you ever stood next to Lee Bracey for very long? You can take it from there. He was telling me the other day, he said, I think my memory's really getting poor. And also, I think my memory's really getting poor. He and his wife were visiting with Lee Vivian, visiting with a couple, and after the dinner, why they had retired, the gentleman retired to the family room, and the ladies went to the kitchen, stayed in the kitchen. And Lee was telling his friend, he said, you know, we've found this new restaurant. It's really very nice. And the friend said, what's the name of it? Lee said, oh, what's the name of that restaurant? He asked his friend, he said, what was the name of that lady that was the real female star in Gone with the Wind? And his friend said, well, that's Vivian Lee. He said, turned to the kitchen and said, Vivian, what was the name of that restaurant? I assume that's true. I never heard otherwise. Well, rumor has it, and it's only a rumor, and I need to keep emphasizing this as I go along here for a few moments, that sometimes when on vacation near a beach, this stalwart of the faith would be known to have a cigar in his mouth. I know that shocks a lot of you. That's just about as bad as the bathroom humor that we're talking about here. Be strolling the beach with a cigar in his mouth. Very likely, I want to say to you, very likely only chewing it, probably not smoking it. And being the good steward that he probably found it on the beach as he was strolling. And it was probably used, but you don't want to smoke a whole cigar, it's not good for you. Now remember, this is only a rumor. It's just a rumor. It may not have happened. And if it really did happen, it only happens when he's strolling on a beach somewhere. You know, like North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, St. John, St. Thomas, Bahamas. I'm only jesting, you know. He and Vivian don't live anywhere near a beach, or do they? Okay. I think for the sake of the young people, and most of them left a while ago, but for the sake of you young people, I want to offer this disclaimer, really. I'm sure that as he walked on the beach and he had a cigar in his mouth, it was a bubblegum cigar. Yeah. And you can't smoke those. You can try as much as you want. They just won't like, will they? No, I know. Lee's tried that many times. I just want to say thank you, Lee, and I sincerely mean this. Thank you for the foundation that you've laid for the children who've been at Woodburn Christian Children's Home. You helped them to understand how to build a life, on what to build that life. And many of those young people who have now established their own families are building their homes and their lives on that same kind of a foundation, for which we can be very thankful to our Heavenly Father. Thank you for being faithful to the WCCH vision and mission through tough times, especially through tough times. And there were tough times. In the parable of the talents that Jesus shared in Matthew 25, he talks about giving 5 talents and 2 talents and 1 talent. And then when the master came back from a far distance and asked for an accounting of the talents, and there was the increase of the 5 to the 10 and the 2 to the 4, the master said to those servants, well done, good and faithful servant. That's what he said. He didn't say well spoken, well said, well planned, well envisioned. He said well done. Well done, brother. Well done, man. Appreciate you. So on a personal note, I want to say thank you on behalf of Jeanette and myself for the friendship that you've extended to us through almost 40 years of our traveling the trail together. It's been good. And just as a little remembrance of this day, I have something in here. If I can find it. There it comes. It is a cigar. It's a bubblegum cigar. And I don't want you to panic because I said it's a boy and it says it's a girl. Congratulations. Again. So here's to you, my brother, and one for you, sister. And also we have one for Jeremy and one for Tammy in here somewhere. Where's the other one? Oh no, here it comes. Okay. You know the old saying is true. You can hand these out to your kiddos. The old saying is true that the family who chews their bubblegum cigars together sticks together. So go for it. And Vivian, something that you need to really protect, take this and protect it, because as you're strolling those beaches, you know, and he's looking for the remnants of those bubblegum cigars, he'll have his head down, and he may have a tendency to wander off a little. You're going to want to be able to keep track of him. So, just a little glow pop for him to wear. You'll be able to keep track of him, okay? Make sure you take good care of that, okay? A bubblegum cigar is a fake. It's not the real thing, it's a fake. And Lee has not been a fake through these years. He's been a real, genuine person. We can truly say of Lee Bracey, not a bubblegum cigar, he's been a real stogie. Believe it or not, that came to me in 1953. Yes, it smells like that. It's got worms and bugs and everything else in it. My parents and I were on a vacation in California. I was 13 years old, and you were only 4 years old when that was born. Be sure to take the wrapper off before you smoke it. In fact, just chew on it, okay?
All right. We may have a video. Are we doing the video?
No.
No, because we had. It was just too raw. It's from a lawyer. Yeah. Okay. Probably a good idea. Probably a good idea to keep the lawyers away from this entire soiree. All right.
Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about my good friend Lee Bracey. Now, I'm sorry that my schedule does not permit me to be there in person as part of this special event to honor Lee. As we all know, Lee is indeed a unique individual. Lee has the ability to not only be able to relate to children and their families, but also to be able to speak in churches, as well as to be able to persuade elected officials to do the right thing for the children and their families, as well as churches and Christian ministries like the Woodburn Christian Children's Home. For over 37 years, I've been involved in working in state government to protect the families and the churches and their ministries here in the state of Indiana. Lee has been a tremendous help in all of these battles for many, many decades. When I needed someone to rally pastors, Lee was there to help. When I needed someone to get information out to Hoosiers about things that were happening at the State House, Lee was there to help. When I needed someone to discuss the best strategy to protect the families of the state of Indiana and the freedoms that we enjoy in our churches and Christian ministries, Lee was there to help. Now here's the bottom line. Indiana is quite possibly the freest state in the entire nation for churches and Christian ministries, including children's homes like the Woodburn Christian Children's Home. And this is because of the involvement and the hard work of Lee Bracey. Lee, thank you for being a valuable co-laborer in the battle for children, families, churches, and Christian ministries here in the state of Indiana. You've made a big difference in our state. I'm glad that you and Joe have had the opportunity to work together during your transition, and I look forward to working with Joe and the board of directors of the Children's Home in the future, just as I have with you and your board in the past. I'm glad that you and Vivian are not moving out of the state of Indiana because I still plan on calling on you for advice and counsel in the future, my friend. Now, believing that the future is as bright as the promises of God, I know that the future for you and Vivian and your family will be wonderfully blessed. May God continue to bless you, my friend, in the future, just as he has in the past.
All right. We have come to the point where it's time to turn the microphone over, regrettably, to the man of the hour, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lee Bracey. Lee Bracey.
Wow. I don't believe I've been the recipient of that much love for a long time. And I think I pretty much had my response to each one of them here behind the pulpit. Just little remarks to them as they go. I want to thank you all for the love that you've given us today. I thank you also for your strong support of the Woodburn Christian Children's Home. There's nothing closer to our heart than this ministry. And it's been one of the three most fruitful ministries of our career. We've had three. They're all precious to us. Corona, there are four. Corona, Warsaw, Toledo, and here. And I say to each one of you in the room, as I often do to the boys and girls at the Woodburn Christian Children's Home, those who are young and those who are grown, is as long as we're on this earth, and I say to every one of you, you've got someone who loves you and believes you. And when we're no longer here, you'll have someone up in heaven looking down and cheering you on. And I hope that there will come a day when many of you are reminded of that, because we'll be cheering you on. The next thing is this. To my own grandchildren, I wrote in their journals more than a year ago at Christmas time. And to each of our children from the Woodburn Christian Children's Home in the last newsletter that I wrote, some people will warn you never to bite off more than you can chew. But I say I'd rather choke on greatness than nibble at mediocrity. Pray and ask God to give you something significant to do for his kingdom, and then do it with all your heart, mind, and soul. Follow Jesus. Don't ever turn back. If someone in the church offends you, shake it off. If someone in the church disappoints you, and they will, because they're people, if you put your faith in any man or woman, they will disappoint you. If you mess up, and you will, pray and ask God to forgive you. Pick yourself up, follow Jesus, and we'll all be in heaven someday. Amen. God bless your family. We love you all very, very much.
Thank you so much again for coming. It has been a tremendous evening. And Fred mentioned that passage in Hebrews chapter 12 where the Bible tells us we're surrounded by that great cloud of witnesses, and you all part of that great cloud of witnesses, and Lee and Vivian are part of that great cloud of witnesses, and we're thankful for that. The Woodburn Christian Children's Home is a vital ministry and resource for the church, and I pray we have many, many decades in the future where we're coming alongside kids and their families in a lot of different ways. And you guys have heard a lot today. Everything I was going to say was covered, so I don't know what else to add to it, but just a great sense of thankfulness. Just a great sense of thankfulness. And I pray that you'll keep us in your thoughts. And you'll continue to pray for the Woodburn Christian Children's Home. And Lee and Vivian will have many, many opportunities to pour out that great love they have for people in a lot of different ways. And we'll continue getting together with them and asking them for their advice and what would you do in this scenario kind of things. And Lee has been a great mentor, and Vivian as well, with my wife and I. We're just thankful. We're thankful for everybody here today. And just as a reminder, there's gift bags, right? One per family on the way out. In the gift bag, there's some things, some sweets. There's a golf ball, because we have a golf tournament coming up. If you don't play golf, give it to someone and tell them to go to the golf tournament. It's a globe, kind of, yeah. Yeah, kind of fix that, you know. And we also, there's an auction coming up, some info in there about that. There's a bunch of stuff in the gift bags for y'all. And we just want to say thank you on behalf of the Woodburn Christian Children's Home for your time. And we also wanted to mention that the board of directors at the Children's Home made a unanimous vote in keeping with Lee and Vivian's love for Christian higher education. The board of directors at the Children's Home voted unanimously to start a Lee and Vivian Bracey Scholarship Fund at Great Lakes Christian College. So, and the seed money for that is a $5,000 gift, a scholarship, set up with the children, with the college, and so. It's just a wonderful way, and there'll be ways for you to respond to that if you like, and we'll let you know about some of that information. And if you want to give a gift in honor of Lee and Vivian, there's a way to do that before you leave, because that's how we roll. So let's have a word of prayer. Gracious Father, Lord, through the corridors of time, you have filled it with faithful men and women. Many that come to mind, Lord, as we look back upon the people who have influenced us, and certainly this day, Father, with Lee and Vivian, we give you praise for these men and women you have put in our lives who have impacted us in such wonderful ways, who have kept the faith in the Lordship of Jesus Christ on the good times and in the bad times. Father, today is a great celebration of that. We're grateful, Father, for the example of Lee and Vivian, and especially of their family too, Lord, who have committed and sacrificed so much. Father, now as we turn another page in the chapter of the life story of WCCH, Father, we pray a hedge of protection you would surround us with, so that your servants at the Children's Home can continue to come alongside families and children. Father, we pray for your protection against every evil thing, while providing opportunity to proclaim the good news of Jesus into the lives of children and their families. Father, today we offer ourselves to you as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing. Father, may this be our spiritual act of worship. And we offer this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.